A fruit boy saves a millionaire's life during a sudden earthquake. A few days later, he brings a strange woman to the boy's house and makes him cry. The San Francisco farmers market was already alive with color and chatter as the morning sun broke over the city's rooftops. Vendors arranged their wares in neat rows, calling out to potential customers in melodic bursts, their voices weaving into the fabric of the bustling scene. Jerry stood at the edge of their modest stall, his small hands deftly stacking oranges into a perfect pyramid. The fruit caught the light, glowing against the faded wooden cart where a small framed photo of his parents rested quietly in the corner. "Careful with that top one, Jerry," Martha said, her voice steady but warm. She adjusted her worn sweater against the crisp morning breeze and handed him another orange. Her hands, calloused and marked by time, worked quickly to arrange the strawberries into baskets lined with wax paper. "I know, Grandma," Jerry replied, his tone cheerful but focused. He adjusted the orange with a meticulous care that belied his age. "I want it to look perfect. The prettier it is, the faster they'll sell, right?" Martha gave a small smile, the kind that reached her eyes but stopped short of softening the lines etched into her face. "That's right. People eat with their eyes first." The market swirled with activity around them. Children tugged at their parents' sleeves. The sharp scent of citrus mingled with the sweetness of freshly baked bread, and the occasional bark of a dog punctuated the hum of conversation. However, Jerry and Martha saw their small stall as a secluded haven amidst the bustling market. They worked with a practiced rhythm, each motion deliberate, every word exchanged weighted with an unspoken understanding. A woman approached, her bag already heavy with purchases. She examined the apples Jerry had carefully polished that morning. "These look beautiful," she said, turning one over in her hands. "How much?" "2 for $1, Jerry answered quickly, glancing at Martha to make sure he'd gotten it right. She gave a slight nod, her approval silent, but firm. "Fair price," the woman said, handing over a few crumpled bills. "Your grandson's a hard worker." Jerry beamed as he bagged the apples, but Martha's smile faltered for just a moment. "He's a good boy," she said, her voice quieter now. "His parents would be proud." The customer's smile grew softer, but she didn't pry. Instead, she tipped her head in thanks and moved on, leaving Martha staring for a heartbeat longer than usual at the empty space where the woman had stood. Jerry, oblivious to the moment, turned back to his pyramid of oranges, adjusting a single fruit that had begun to tilt. "Grandma," he said, breaking the silence, "do you think we'll sell all the strawberries today?" "Depends," Martha replied, her hands busy wrapping a small bunch of grapes for another customer. "If you keep smiling like that, I'm sure we will." Jerry grinned, his cheeks reddening slightly. "It's because I polished them. People like shiny things." Martha chuckled low in her throat, shaking her head. "Maybe you're right. But remember, it's not just how they look, it's what's inside that matters." The words lingered in the air as Martha's gaze drifted to the photograph on the cart. It was slightly smudged, the glass cracked in one corner, but she didn't mind. She reached out to straighten it, brushing dust from its edges. The picture showed a young couple, their smiles radiant and carefree, holding a much smaller Jerry between them. A pang of something sharp flickered in her chest, but she smoothed it away with the same practiced efficiency she applied to everything else. "Grandma, are you okay?" Jerry's voice brought her back, his eyes searching hers. "I'm fine, sweetheart," she said, her tone as steady as her hands. "I just want to ensure that your parents are monitoring us today." Jerry nodded solemnly, his gaze following hers to the photo. "They'd like it here," he said after a pause, his voice soft but certain. "They would," Martha agreed. She adjusted the photo one last time before turning back to the stall. "Now let's see if we can sell enough fruit to make Mr. Ben jealous." Jerry laughed at the mention of the market guard, a family friend who often teased them about their knack for outselling their neighbors. "I bet we can," he said, his tone full of youthful confidence. The day progressed intermittently, as customers passed by in waves. Martha's eyes flicked occasionally to Jerry, watching him with a mix of pride and something deeper, something closer to hope. The city carried on around them, indifferent to their small world, but within that stall there was warmth, there was resilience, and most of all, there was love. Adam Reynolds adjusted the cuffs of his tailored navy suit as he strolled through the San Francisco farmers' market. The air was thick, with the scent of ripe fruit, baked goods, and an undercurrent of the sea breeze from the nearby bay. He navigated the crowd with a natural ease, his polished shoes clicking faintly against the cobblestone paths. Around him, vendors called out to potential customers, their voices blending with the occasional laughter of children and the low hum of conversation. The market buzzed with life as Adam entered, a sharp contrast to the sterile office spaces he usually inhabited. Stalls lined the cobblestone paths, bursting with fruits, flowers, and baked goods. Aromas of cinnamon, citrus, and grilled meats mingled in the crisp air, tugging at his senses. He moved through the crowd with an easy grace, his polished shoes clicking against the uneven stone. "Good morning," a vendor called out, waving him toward a display of artisan breads. Adam offered a polite nod, but kept walking. His gaze scanned the vibrant chaos, looking for the bakery stall he'd heard about. This wasn't Adam's usual environment. The structured precision of a boardroom or the familiar hum of a first-class cabin was more his pace. However, he had a mission to fulfill today. Rachel had mentioned the scones from this market, an unusual blend of pandan, ginger, and strawberry that she'd heard about from a friend. She'd dropped the hint so casually, as if it didn't matter. But Adam knew better. It mattered. He paused at a stall displaying fresh flowers, letting his gaze wander over the vibrant petals as he gathered his bearings. Nearby, a boy caught his attention. The kid couldn't have been more than 10, but he moved with the efficiency of someone far older. His small hands swiftly arranged oranges into a pyramid, all the while monitoring the nearby customers. Adam observed the boy's wide smile as he expressed gratitude to a woman who had just bought a bag of apples. The boy's enthusiasm was infectious, and Adam found himself smiling. "Kids got hustle," he murmured to himself before moving on. As he weaved through the market, Adam scanned the stalls, his sharp eyes searching for the bakery his assistant had described. It wasn't long before he spotted it, a quaint setup with a polished wooden counter and glass displays filled with golden pastries. A hand-painted sign reading "Asian Fusion Scones" hung above it, slightly crooked, but charmingly so. "Morning," Adam greeted the vendor, a middle-aged woman with a friendly face and flour dusted on her apron. "Good morning," she chirped. "What can I get for you?" Adam leaned in slightly, inspecting the scones. They were smaller than he expected, their pale green hue speckled with hints of pink and gold. The aroma was subtle yet enticing, ginger, and something sweet he couldn't quite place. "I'll take a dozen of these," he said, gesturing to the display. "Good choice," the vendor said, reaching for a box. "They're best fresh. Planning to share, or are you keeping these all to yourself?" "They're for my wife," Adam replied with a small smile. "She has a fondness for sweets and a fascination with unique items. I'm flying back to LA this afternoon, so I figured these might score me some points." The vendor laughed as she packed the scones. "Smart man. These are a great choice. They're light but packed with flavor. Ginger, pandan, a touch of strawberry, sweet and spicy, just like life." Adam chuckled, handing her a crisp bill. "Exactly what I need." He slipped the box under his arm and turned to leave when the ground beneath him shifted. At first, it was barely noticeable, like a heavy truck passing in the distance. Then it grew, a violent tremor that sent people stumbling and stalls shaking. Screams erupted around him as displays toppled, spilling fruit and wares onto the cobblestones. Adam's instincts kicked in. He ducked toward the bakery's counter for shelter, but a crashing sound above him made him freeze. He looked up just in time to see the bakery's display cabinet teetering, its weighty frame losing the battle against gravity. Before he could react, the bakery cabinet beside him lurched forward. Its heavy wooden frame crashed down, pinning him beneath its weight. Pain shot through his chest, sharp and immediate, forcing a strangled gasp from his lips. Dust filled the air, clogging his throat and blurring his vision. Adam tried to move, but the weight held him fast. Around him, the world dissolved into noise, cries for help, the rumble of falling debris, and the ominous groan of shifting earth. He clenched his teeth, forcing himself to focus, but his breaths came in shallow, uneven bursts. "Stay calm," he muttered under his breath, though his voice trembled. His mind raced with images of Rachel, her laugh, her smile, the way she always teased him about his overly meticulous planning. He clung to those thoughts as the dust settled around him, his strength waning with each passing second. The market was still a cacophony of chaos, but Adam's world had narrowed to the suffocating weight of the cabinet and the dimming light above him. Somewhere in the distance, he heard the faint cries of a child, high-pitched, desperate. But they seemed far away, as though separated by an unbridgeable gulf. And then, darkness closed in. The market was unrecognizable. What had been a lively tapestry of colors and voices now lay in ruins. Stalls were toppled, their wares scattered like fallen leaves, while dust thickened the air, catching in throats and stinging eyes. The faint smell of crushed fruit mingled with something acrid and metallic. Screams and cries for help broke through the rumble of aftershocks, creating a jarring symphony of fear and confusion. Jerry gripped Martha's hand tightly, his small fingers digging into her calloused palm. "Grandma, where do we go?" His voice trembled, barely audible over the chaos. "Keep moving, Jerry. Toward the open space near the fountain," Martha said, her tone steady despite the terror flashing in her eyes. Her free hand clutched the frayed strap of her canvas bag, its contents spilling slightly, a few bruised oranges and a photograph sticking out at an odd angle. They wove through the destruction, Martha's firm grip steering Jerry away from collapsing awnings and frantic shoppers. Yet, even amidst the panic, Jerry's gaze darted about, scanning the wreckage with a determination far beyond his years. A faint groan reached his ears, cutting through the cacophony like a whisper. He stopped abruptly, pulling on Martha's arm. "Wait, Grandma, someone's hurt." Martha hesitated, her head snapping toward the sound. "Jerry, we have to keep moving. It's too dangerous." "But—" Jerry pointed toward the bakery stall, where a wooden cabinet lay toppled amid broken glass and splintered shelves. Beneath it, a man's arm protruded, motionless. Martha followed his gaze, her face tightening. "Stay here," she commanded, but Jerry was already moving. He darted through the rubble, his small frame nimble and quick. Martha muttered a prayer under her breath before following, her heart pounding with equal parts fear and pride. As Jerry approached the man, he dropped to his knees, coughing against the dust. Adam's face was pale, streaked with dirt and a small cut on his temple. His chest rose and fell shallowly, and his eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Sir," Jerry called, his voice loud but calm. "Can you hear me?" Adam groaned, his lips parting as if to speak, but no sound came out. "Grandma, he's alive!" Jerry shouted, glancing over his shoulder. Martha was already waving frantically. "Ben, over here!" Her voice carried over the chaos, cutting through the noise like a sharp blade. Ben, the market's long-time guard, was helping an elderly woman to safety when he heard Martha's call. His burly frame turned, and he sprinted toward them, his orange safety vest stark against the dust-filled air. "What happened?" Ben asked, breathless as he knelt beside Jerry. "The cabinet's pinning him," Jerry explained, gesturing toward Adam. "We have to move it." Ben assessed the situation quickly, his weathered face grim. "It's heavy, but if we work together, we can lift it. Martha, take Jerry and stand back." "No," Jerry protested, his voice firm. "I can help." Martha opened her mouth to argue, but saw the resolve in Jerry's wide eyes. "Fine," she said reluctantly, "but listen to Ben." Ben nodded and positioned himself at one end of the cabinet. "Jerry, you push here. Martha, grab that side and be ready to pull him out when we lift." Jerry wiped his hands on his shirt, leaving streaks of dirt, and placed them against the splintered wood. "Okay, ready. On 3, Ben said. 1, 2, 3. They heaved, muscles straining and breaths ragged. The cabinet groaned under their effort, shifting inch by inch. Jerry's face turned red with exertion, his fingers trembling as he pushed with all his might. "Now, Martha!" Ben barked. Martha reached in, her hands grasping Adam's shoulders. With a grunt, she pulled him free, his body limp but out of danger. The cabinet dropped with a thud as Ben and Jerry released it, and they all staggered back, panting. "He's breathing," Martha said, relief flooding her voice as she knelt to check Adam's pulse. Ben stood, wiping sweat from his brow. "We need to get him out of here. The aftershocks aren't done yet." "I'll get help," Ben said, and turned back toward the chaos, shouting for nearby rescue workers. Jerry crouched beside Adam, his small hand gripping the man's much larger one. "You're going to be okay," he whispered, as much to himself as to Adam. The man's fingers twitched faintly in response, and Jerry's heart lifted with a spark of hope. Martha placed a hand on Jerry's shoulder. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get him to safety." Together, they began the careful task of moving Adam, their small but determined group navigating the fractured market. Above them, the sky was still grey with dust, but a sliver of sunlight broke through, a quiet promise of better things to come. The emergency room of the small local hospital buzzed with subdued urgency. Nurses and doctors moved with quiet efficiency, their faces drawn but focused. Amidst the flurry, Jerry sat on a hard plastic chair near the waiting area, his legs dangling just above the floor. His hands, scraped and caked with dried dirt, rested on his lap, the knuckles slightly swollen from earlier exertion. Martha stood nearby, leaning against the wall with her arms crossed tightly. She glanced toward the treatment room where Adam had been taken. The doors remained closed, a glowing red, occupied light above them. She sighed, adjusting her scarf as though it might settle the unease that had taken root in her chest. Jerry fidgeted with the hem of his shirt. "Grandma, do you think he's going to be okay?" Martha turned her head, her face softening. "The doctors are taking care of him, Jerry. You did all you could, more than most people would have." Jerry nodded, though his gaze remained fixed on his hands. The silence stretched between them, filled only by the faint hum of hospital equipment and murmured conversations. "Let me see those hands," she said, her tone lighter now. "Can't have you walking around looking like you've been in a street fight." Jerry held out his hands reluctantly, wincing as the cloth stung against the cuts. Martha worked carefully, wiping away the grime. "You were brave today," she murmured, not looking up. "Your parents would have been proud." The mention of his parents made Jerry glance at the photograph tucked into Martha's bag. It had been a long time since he'd brought them up himself, but he thought of them often. His father's big laugh, his mother's warm hands. They lived in the quiet moments of his memories, pieced together like a patchwork quilt. Martha began, her voice low but steady. She caught the flicker of curiosity in Jerry's eyes and continued. "Your dad would have done the same thing, rushing in to help without a second thought. always had this way of seeing people, really seeing them, even when others just walked on by. Jerry's lips curved into a small smile. "You think so?" "I know so," Martha replied firmly. She sat down beside him, her hands resting atop her knees. "You've got his bravery, his big heart too. Your mother used to say it made him reckless, but I think it's what made him special." Jerry looked up at her, his wide eyes earnest. "Do you think they'd be proud of me?" Martha reached out, brushing a bit of dust from his hair. "They'd be more than proud. They'd be amazed." Jerry nodded, his eyes lingering on the corridor. His small chest felt heavy, but it wasn't just fatigue. It was something deeper. A mix of worry and the strange new weight of responsibility. He had seen the man's face, pale and drawn, and felt the faint twitch of Adam's hand as it gripped his own during the rescue. It wasn't something Jerry would forget anytime soon. They stepped out of the hospital into the late afternoon light, which was muted and soft after the chaos of the morning. The streets were quieter here, far removed from the market's destruction. Martha hailed a taxi, and they climbed in, the leather seats cool against their backs. As the car rumbled through the uneven streets, Martha stole a glance at her grandson. Jerry's face was set in thought, his brow furrowed just slightly, something he'd picked up from his father. She sighed softly and reached into her bag, pulling out a damp handkerchief. Jerry smiled faintly at that, the image of his parents suddenly vivid in his mind. He could almost hear his mother's voice, teasing, but full of love. By the time they reached home, the sun was beginning to dip below the rooftops. Their small house stood steady amidst the lingering unease of the day. Inside, everything was as they'd left it. The modest kitchen, the creaky chairs, and the small wooden table where Jerry often did his schoolwork. It was their haven, simple, but safe. Martha put on the kettle, its whistle breaking the silence as Jerry sat at the table, his gaze distant. The events of the day felt like a lifetime ago, and yet they clung to him, shaping something unspoken in the air. A knock at the door pulled both of them from their thoughts. Martha opened it to reveal Ben, still in his orange vest, his face weary but kind. "I just wanted to check on you two," he said, stepping inside, "and see how the man's doing." "He's at the hospital," Martha explained, pouring a cup of tea for Ben. "They said he's stable. We didn't stay long. Figured the doctors didn't need us in the way." Ben nodded. "Good to hear. The market's a mess, though. They'll close it for at least 2 weeks for repairs." Martha sighed, her hand hovering over the kettle. 2 weeks. "We'll manage," she said, more to herself than to Ben. Jerry sat quietly, his thoughts drifting back to Adam. Somewhere in the hospital, the man lay recovering, unaware of the boy who'd pulled him from the rubble. However, the image of Adam holding his hand lingered in Jerry's mind, serving as a silent reminder of life's fragility and the strength they found within themselves during crucial moments. The sterile white of the hospital walls blurred as Adam Reynolds opened his eyes to the dim light of the recovery room. His chest ached with a dull pressure, and his head throbbed faintly. For a moment, he struggled to place where he was, the chaotic sounds of the earthquake flashing in his memory, like scattered pieces of glass. "Sir, you're awake," a nurse said, her voice calm but efficient as she adjusted his IV line. "You're lucky. A few fractured ribs, but nothing life-threatening." Adam's mind reeled, piecing together fragmented memories. He remembered the cabinet crashing down, the suffocating dust, and, most vividly, a small dirt-covered hand gripping his as he drifted in and out of consciousness. "The boy," he rasped, his voice rough from disuse. "Where is the boy?" The nurse frowned in confusion. "I'm not sure what you mean. You were brought in by an older woman and a child, but they didn't stay long." Adam nodded faintly, the details of their faces coming into focus. The boy had been young, 10, maybe 11, with a determined set to his jaw. The woman, likely his grandmother, had a quiet strength about her. He owed them his life. Ignoring the dull ache in his ribs, Adam reached for the phone beside his bed. He dialed Rachel's number, the only one he knew by heart. She picked up on the first ring. "Adam!" Her voice was sharp with worry. "I've been calling for hours. Are you okay?" "I'm fine now," he said, his tone softer. "But something happened, Rachel. There was an earthquake at the market. He hesitated, his words catching as he remembered the weight of the cabinet pressing down on him. "I was trapped, but this boy and his grandmother saved me." "Saved you?" Her voice was laced with disbelief. "Adam, are you hurt?" "Just a few bruises. Nothing to worry about." He exhaled slowly. "Listen, I'm not coming home today. I need to find them." "Find them? Who?" "The family who saved me. I can't just leave without thanking them." Rachel paused, and Adam could picture her biting her lip in thought. "Okay," she said finally, her voice gentler now. "Just, promise me you'll take care of yourself." "I will. I'll call you soon." He ended the call and sat back, wincing at the movement. Gratitude swirled within him, sharpening into a quiet resolve. When Adam arrived later that day, the market had completely changed. Yellow caution tape flapped in the breeze, cordoning off the damaged stalls. The air was heavy with the scent of dust and broken earth, the vibrant chaos replaced by an eerie stillness. Adam stood at the edge, scanning the remnants for a familiar face. There was no sign of the boy or his grandmother. Frustration simmered beneath his calm exterior as he approached a cluster of workers sorting through the debris. "Excuse me," he called out. "I'm looking for someone, a woman and her grandson. They were here during the earthquake." The workers exchanged glances before shaking their heads. "A lot of people were evacuated," one of them said. "Hard to say." Adam's shoulders sagged, but he wasn't ready to give up. As he turned away, a flash of orange caught his eye. A man in a fluorescent safety vest was directing workers near the far end of the market. His burly frame and weathered face were instantly recognizable. "Excuse me," Adam called, quickening his pace. The man turned, his brows lifting in surprise. "Well, I'll be. You're the guy we pulled out from under that cabinet." "That's right," Adam said, extending a hand. "I'm Adam Reynolds. I wanted to thank you, but more importantly, I need to find the boy and his grandmother who saved me." Ben's expression softened. "You mean Martha and her grandson Jerry. Good folks. They live not too far from here." A wave of relief washed over Adam. "Can you tell me where to find them?" Ben nodded, pulling a notepad from his pocket. "I'll do you one better. I'll take you there myself. Hop in my truck, it's just a short drive." Adam hesitated for a moment, the polished shoes he wore feeling out of place amidst the rubble and dust. But as he climbed into the worn seat of Ben's truck, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The boy's dirt-streaked face and unwavering determination were etched in his memory, a quiet reminder of the debt he owed. The truck rumbled to life, and Ben steered them away from the ruined market toward the quieter residential streets of San Francisco. The anticipation in Adam's chest grew with every turn. Somewhere ahead, the boy and his grandmother were carrying on, likely unaware of the profound impact they'd made on his life. As they neared the modest homes lining the street, Adam spotted a small house with a tidy garden out front. His heart quickened. This was it. The next chapter of gratitude and connection was waiting just beyond that door. The small house stood quietly at the edge of the street, its modest facade framed by a tidy garden bursting with late-blooming marigolds and tiny succulents in mismatched pots. A thin trail of smoke curled from the chimney, carrying with it a faint aroma that Adam couldn't quite place, something sweet and inviting. He adjusted his jacket as Ben parked the truck and gestured toward the door. "Go on," Ben said with a small smile. "They're good folks. Just knock." Adam hesitated for only a moment before stepping out of the truck. The air was cooler here, a light breeze rustling the leaves of a small lemon tree by the front window. Gathering his thoughts, he walked to the door and knocked gently. The sound of shuffling footsteps inside was followed by a boyish voice. "Grandma, someone's at the door." The door creaked open to reveal Jerry, his wide brown eyes blinking up at Adam in surprise. His hands, faintly dusted with flour, clutched a kitchen towel. For a moment, neither spoke, until Jerry's lips curved into a cautious smile. "You're the man from the market," Jerry said, his voice soft but certain. "Are you feeling better?" Adam crouched slightly to meet his gaze, offering a warm smile in return. "I am, Adam. Thanks to you and your grandmother. I came to say thank you." "Jerry? Who's there?" Martha's voice called from deeper inside the house. She appeared moments later, wiping her hands on an apron. Her eyes widened slightly when she saw Adam, but her expression quickly settled into one of kind recognition. "Oh, it's you. Come in, come in." Adam stepped into the house, immediately enveloped by its warmth. The space was small, but impeccably clean, with walls painted a soft yellow and shelves lined with jars of preserves and knickknacks that spoke of years well lived. "What is the name of your favorite pastry? Leave it in the comments. We're curious." A wood-burning stove crackled in the corner, and the scent of freshly baked scones filled the air. "You have a lovely home," Adam said sincerely, taking in the cozy details. His gaze fell on the small kitchen table where a tray of scones sat cooling, their golden tops glistening with a light glaze. "Thank you," Martha replied, her tone polite but humble. "Please have a seat. Jerry, fetch a plate." Jerry nodded, quickly grabbing a small plate and carefully selecting one of the scones. He placed it in front of Adam, his shy smile returning. "It's not fancy, but we made these with the fruit we couldn't sell after the earthquake." Adam picked up the scone, his fingers brushing against its warm, soft surface. He broke off a piece, the delicate crumbs scattering slightly, and brought it to his mouth. The flavor was extraordinary, an unexpected combination of tart and sweet, with a hint of ginger that lingered pleasantly. "This is incredible," Adam said, after a moment, his voice full of genuine admiration. "Rachel, my wife, would love these." Jerry's face lit up at the praise, and even Martha allowed herself a small, pleased smile. "It's just a simple recipe," she said, waving a hand dismissively. "We've been making these for years." Adam looked between them, his curiosity growing. "Do you sell these often?" "When the market's open, yes," Martha replied. "But after the earthquake, it'll be closed for a while. We'll manage, though. We always do." There was no self-pity in her tone, only quiet resilience. Adam felt a pang of respect for the woman and the boy who had risked so much for him. "Would you mind if I brought some of these back for Rachel?" Adam asked. "She'd love to try them." Martha hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "Of course. I'll bake a fresh batch for you to take." "That's not necessary," Adam began, reaching for his wallet, but Martha raised a hand. "No payment. You're a guest," she said firmly, her voice leaving no room for argument. "Consider it a thank you for stopping by." Adam smiled, leaning back in his chair. "Then consider this my thank you for saving my life." Martha simply nodded, turning back to the stove to prepare another tray. Jerry sat across from Adam, his hands folded neatly on the table. The boy's earlier shyness was beginning to melt away, and he leaned forward slightly. "Will you tell her about us?" Jerry asked, his tone curious but hopeful. "I will," Adam said, his voice steady. "She'll want to meet you both, and I'll be back too. This won't be my last visit." Martha glanced over her shoulder, her expression softening at Adam's words. For a moment, the house was filled with the simple sounds of the stove, the quiet murmur of gratitude, and the unspoken bond forming between three unlikely companions. Adam left with a small box of scones and a heart much fuller than when he'd arrived. As the truck pulled away, he glanced back at the little house, feeling a warmth he hadn't expected. A quiet promise of connection, kindness, and a second chance to give back. The Los Angeles evening was alive with the hum of traffic and the golden glow of the setting sun. Adam stepped through the front door of his home, the familiar scent of lavender and vanilla greeting him as always. Rachel appeared from the living room, her soft sweater draped casually over her shoulders, her expression equal parts worry and relief. "Adam," she called, rushing toward him, "you're finally home." He barely had time to set down his bag before Rachel enveloped him in a tight hug. "I've been so worried. Are you hurt? Let me see." "I'm fine," Adam assured her, gently prying her hands from his arms. "A few bruises and some sore ribs, but nothing serious." Rachel frowned, her hands lingering near his. "I saw the news about the earthquake. It sounded terrible. What happened?" Adam took her hand and guided her to the sofa. As they sat, he reached for the small box of scones he had carefully carried from San Francisco. Setting it on the coffee table, he began his story. "It was chaos," he started, his voice low and steady. "The market was full. Families, vendors, tourists. When the earthquake hit, it all turned into rubble in seconds. I was pinned under a bakery cabinet. I couldn't move, couldn't even call out for help. I thought—" He paused, his throat tightening slightly. "I thought that might be it." Rachel's grip on his hand tightened, her eyes wide with concern. "But someone found you." "A boy," Adam said, his expression softening, "and his grandmother. They risked their own safety to pull me out. The boy, Jerry, he couldn't have been more than 10, but he was fearless. He grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go, even while the ground was still shaking." Rachel's brow furrowed as Adam continued, describing Martha's calm strength and Jerry's quiet bravery. He spoke of their modest home, the scent of freshly baked scones, and the kindness that radiated from both of them. "They didn't want anything in return," Adam said, shaking his head in disbelief. "Martha refused to take money for the scones, and Jerry, he just wanted to make sure I was okay." Rachel reached for the box, opening it carefully. The sweet, gingery aroma filled the room. She picked up a scone, studying its imperfect glaze and the faint flecks of strawberry on top. "They made these?" she asked, her voice softer now. Adam nodded. "With fruit. They couldn't sell after the market was damaged. Jerry said it wasn't fancy, but I think it's the best thing I've ever tasted." Rachel took a small bite, her eyes closing as the flavors unfolded. "They're wonderful," she murmured. "This family, they sound extraordinary." "They are," Adam agreed, leaning back into the sofa. For a moment, the room fell into a contemplative silence, broken only by the faint hum of a distant car engine. "They didn't hesitate," Adam continued, his voice thoughtful. "The boy, Jerry, he's just a kid, but he ran straight into the chaos. Martha, his grandmother, is incredibly resilient. Together, they pulled me out." Rachel sat beside him, her eyes wide with wonder. "What kind of people do that? Just risk everything for a stranger?" "Good people," Adam said simply. Rachel picked up one of the scones, turning it over in her hands. "They sound incredible," she said softly, though her thoughts seemed far away. "You said the boy's name was Jerry?" Adam nodded. Yeah, why? The name didn't register with Rachel, and she shook her head. It's nothing. I was just curious. She took a small bite of the scone, her expression shifting from surprise to delight. These are incredible. Adam chuckled. Told you. For a moment, they sat in companionable silence, the quiet punctuated only by the occasional crunch of pastry. Then Rachel spoke again, her voice hesitant. Do you think we could meet them? I'd like to thank them myself. I'm sure they'd like that, Adam said. Martha didn't say much, but you can tell she's proud of Jerry. He reminded me of someone who's not afraid to step up when it matters. Rachel looked at him, her expression softening. He sounds special. Adam nodded. He is. And there's something about them. I can't explain it, but I feel like meeting them wasn't an accident. Rachel tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. You think so? Adam shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. Sometimes people come into your life when you need them most. Maybe this was one of those times. Rachel didn't reply immediately, but her gaze lingered on him, thoughtful and warm. Well, if they're as amazing as you say, I'm glad you found them. I am too, Adam said, his voice quiet. I think they've already given me more than I can repay. Rachel reached out, resting a hand on his arm. Then, let's start by thanking them properly. Adam covered her hand with his, nodding. We will. Soon, as they sat together, the box of scones between them, the sun dipped lower, casting a golden glow over the room. For Adam, the weight of gratitude sat lighter on his chest, knowing that the connection forged in the chaos of the earthquake was only just beginning. The drive back to San Francisco after 4 months was quiet, the rhythmic hum of the tires on the highway the only sound as Adam focused on the road. Rachel sat beside him, staring out the window, her thoughts clouded with anticipation. Adam had told her so much about Jerry and Martha that she felt like she already knew them. Yet, there was something more, a nagging curiosity she couldn't quite place. When they finally pulled onto the narrow street lined with modest homes, Rachel sat up straighter, her fingers tightening around her purse. Adam parked in front of a small house with a tidy garden of marigolds and succulents, just as he'd described. Rachel noted the simplicity, the quiet warmth radiating from the place, even before they stepped inside. This is it, Adam said, cutting the engine. Ready? Rachel nodded, though her chest felt tight. Let's do this. Adam knocked gently on the door. There was a muffled sound of footsteps, followed by Jerry's familiar voice. Grandma, someone's here. The door opened to reveal the boy, his brown eyes lighting up when he saw Adam. You came back, he exclaimed, his face breaking into a grin. Then, his gaze shifted to Rachel, and something in his expression changed. His smile faltered, replaced by wide-eyed astonishment. For a moment, Jerry just stared, his chest rising and falling rapidly. Then, without warning, tears welled in his eyes. Mom, he whispered, his voice cracking. The word struck Rachel with the force of a thunderbolt. She froze, confusion and disbelief swirling in her mind. What did you say? She asked softly, her voice trembling. Jerry took a shaky step forward, tears spilling freely down his cheeks. You look just like her, he choked out. My mom. Martha appeared behind him, wiping her hands on her apron. Her sharp intake of breath cut through the air as her gaze landed on Rachel. Angela, she murmured, her voice barely audible. Rachel turned to Adam, her eyes searching his for answers. He looked just as stunned, his hand resting lightly on her back as if to steady her. Martha cleared her throat, stepping forward and placing a gentle hand on Jerry's shoulder. Come in, she said, her voice steadier now. "There's something we need to talk about." Inside, the living room was just as Adam had described, cozy and inviting, with jars of preserves lining the shelves and a faint scent of baked goods lingering in the air. Rachel sat on the worn sofa, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, while Adam settled beside her. Jerry stayed close to Martha, his tear-streaked face pressed against her side. Martha retrieved a small photo album from a shelf and opened it with careful hands. She flipped through the pages, stopping at a photograph of a young woman with warm brown eyes and a radiant smile. She held a baby in her arms, a baby with Jerry's wide eyes and unruly curls. "That's Angela," Martha said, sliding the photo toward Rachel. "Do you know her?" Rachel's breath hitched as she stared at the image. It was like looking into a mirror, yet not. Angela's face was hers, but softer, warmer, touched with a happiness Rachel hadn't felt in years. "She's my sister. I don't understand," Rachel whispered. "She left so long ago. We lost touch." Martha nodded, her expression pained. "She married young, against her family's wishes. She and her husband moved here to start a new life. When they passed, I took Jerry in." Rachel turned to Jerry, her heart breaking at the sight of his tear-streaked face. "You're my nephew?" she asked, her voice thick with emotion. Jerry nodded, his small hands clutching Martha's apron tightly. "My mum told me about you," he said quietly, "but I didn't think I'd ever meet you." Rachel's chest tightened as she reached out, her hand trembling. "Jerry, I'm so sorry. I didn't know." Jerry hesitated, then took her hand, his grip firm despite his trembling fingers. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're here now." Adam watched the exchange in silence, his heart heavy with the weight of the moment. He reached over and placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder, offering his silent support. Martha broke the silence, her voice gentle but firm. "Angela would want us to be a family," she said. "For Jerry." Rachel nodded, tears streaming down her face as she pulled Jerry into a tight hug. The boy melted into her embrace, his small frame shaking as years of longing and loss poured out. For the first time in a long time, Rachel felt something crack open inside her, a space she hadn't realized was empty, now filled with the unexpected gift of family. The cemetery was still, save for the occasional rustle of leaves in the light breeze. Rows of modest gravestones stretched out beneath the overcast sky, their inscriptions softened by years of wind and rain. It was a quiet place, touched with the kind of serenity that made you lower your voice without realizing it. Rachel stood at the edge of the gravel path, her eyes fixed on the two headstones before her. The names etched into the weathered stone seemed both foreign and familiar: Angela Harris and Daniel Harris. Beneath their names, a simple inscription read, "Together in love, forever in peace." Her chest tightened as she stepped closer, her hand instinctively clutching the small bouquet of daisies she had brought. Behind her, Adam stood silently, his presence steady and grounding. Jerry was at her side, holding Martha's hand, his small fingers gripping hers tightly. "This is where they're buried?" Rachel asked softly, her voice barely audible over the faint rustle of the trees. Martha nodded, her expression somber. "It's a simple grave, but it's a place to remember them." Jerry knelt beside the headstones, his other hand brushing away a few stray leaves that had gathered at the base. His movements were careful, almost reverent. "Hi, Mum." "Hi, Dad," he whispered. His voice wavered slightly, but he didn't cry. He had cried enough already. Rachel hesitated, her eyes stinging as she knelt beside Jerry. She placed the bouquet carefully in front of Angela's grave, her fingers lingering on the flowers as if she could somehow transfer her grief through the simple gesture. "I don't even know what to say," Rachel admitted, her voice thick. "I spent so many years angry with you, Angela. I didn't understand why you left, why you wouldn't reach out. And now—" Her breath hitched, and she wiped her cheek roughly. "Now I'll never get the chance to ask." Martha placed a gentle hand on Rachel's shoulder, her voice soft. "She would have wanted you to know she loved you, even if she couldn't say it herself. She talked about you, you know. She always wondered if you were happy." Rachel bit her lip, nodding, as fresh tears threatened to spill. "I wish I could have told her I missed her, that I never stopped thinking about her." Jerry looked up at her, his wide eyes filled with both pain and hope. "You're here now," he said simply, echoing the words he had spoken when they first met. "She'd be glad you came." Rachel placed a trembling hand on Jerry's shoulder, pulling him into a side hug. He leaned into her, his small frame warm against hers. "Thank you, Jerry," she murmured, "for being so brave, for keeping her memory alive." Adam stepped forward then, placing a hand on Rachel's back as he knelt beside her. "Angela would want us to take care of him," he said, his voice steady, "to make sure he has everything he needs." Rachel nodded, her gaze shifting to Jerry. "We will," she promised, her voice resolute. "Jerry, you're not alone anymore. We're here for you, always." Jerry's lips quivered, but he managed a small smile. "Really?" he asked, his voice small. Adam crouched beside him, meeting his gaze. "Really?" he said firmly. "You're part of our family now." The boy's smile grew a little wider, and he wiped at his eyes with the back of his hand. Martha watched the exchange silently, her expression softening with quiet relief. She had carried the weight of Angela's memory alone for so long, but now it felt as though the burden was shared. They stood together in the cool afternoon air, the unspoken bond between them growing stronger with every moment. Rachel reached into her bag and pulled out a small framed photograph, a picture of her and Angela as children, their arms slung around each other, their identical faces alight with mischief. "She kept this," Rachel said, holding it out to Jerry. "It was one of her favorites. I think she'd want you to have it." Jerry took the photo carefully, his fingers brushing over the worn edges. He stared at it for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled, clutching it to his chest. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel knelt again, her arms wrapping around him as tears spilled freely down her cheeks. "No, Jerry," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me back a piece of her." As the wind carried the faint scent of daisies through the air, the four of them stood in quiet unity, their grief mingling with a newfound sense of purpose. Angela and Daniel's graves stood as a reminder of what was lost, but also of what remained. A family, stitched together by love and resilience, ready to face whatever came next. The sun filtered through the classroom windows, casting a soft golden light on rows of desks. Jerry sat near the middle, his hands clasped tightly together on the smooth wooden surface. The hum of quiet conversation among his classmates surrounded him, but his focus remained on the notebook before him. His name, written in careful, blocky letters, stood out against the crisp page: Jerry Harris. The teacher, a cheerful woman with a warm smile, clapped her hands gently to call the room to order. "Welcome to your first day, everyone. I'm Ms. Carter, and I'm so excited to have you all here." Jerry straightened in his seat, his heart pounding. Everything about the room felt strange. The polished desks, the brightly colored posters lining the walls, and the sheer number of faces around him. His old school had been much smaller, its walls faded, and its furniture worn. This was new, intimidating, and filled with unfamiliar rhythms. As Miss Carter began the lesson, Jerry's mind wandered briefly to the weeks leading up to this moment. Rachel and Adam had been insistent that he attend a school where he could thrive. "You're smart, Jerry," Rachel had said, her voice filled with conviction. "You deserve every chance to succeed." Martha had been hesitant at first, concerned about the financial strain it might place on Rachel and Adam, but they had dismissed her worries. "It's the least we can do," Adam had said. "Jerry's family now." Later that day, Jerry found himself standing in line at the cafeteria, a tray balanced in his hands. The din of students chatting and laughing was overwhelming, and he hesitated, unsure where to sit. His stomach knotted as he scanned the sea of unfamiliar faces. "Hey," a voice said beside him. Jerry turned to see a boy about his age, his curly hair falling into his eyes. "You're new, right?" Jerry nodded, clutching his tray tighter. "Yeah, first day." The boy grinned. "Cool. I'm Nathan. Want to sit with me and my friends?" Relief washed over Jerry, and he nodded. "Sure." As they walked to the table, Jerry's nerves began to ease. Nathan introduced him to the group, and soon, Jerry found himself laughing at their jokes and sharing bits of his own story, leaving out the parts that felt too raw to explain. For the first time that day, the knot in his chest loosened. At home that evening, Martha watched Jerry as he recounted his day. His words came in a rush, his face animated as he described his new classmates and how Nathan had helped him feel at ease. She smiled, her heart swelling with pride as she stirred the pot of soup on the stove. "You're doing so well, Jerry," she said, her voice gentle. "I knew you would." Jerry looked up at her, his eyes shining. "Thanks, Grandma. It's different, but I like it. I really like it." Martha turned back to the stove, her hand pausing briefly over the ladle. A quiet sense of gratitude settled over her. They had come so far, from the days when she had worried endlessly about keeping a roof over their heads, to now, with Jerry thriving and their lives intertwined with Rachel and Adam's generosity. She glanced at the framed photograph on the counter, Angela and Daniel, smiling as they cradled a baby Jerry. "We're doing okay," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "You'd be proud." Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Rachel sat in her office, scrolling through photos Adam had taken during their last visit. There was one in particular she kept returning to. Jerry standing in front of his new school, his backpack slung over one shoulder, his smile shy but full of hope. "You're thinking about them again, aren't you?" Adam said, leaning against the doorframe with a cup of coffee in hand. Rachel smiled softly. "I can't help it. I want him to have everything Angela would have wanted for him." "And he will," Adam assured her. "Because of you." Rachel's gaze lingered on the photo. "Because of all of us," she corrected. "He's a part of us now." Back in San Francisco, as Jerry settled into bed, he thought about the day's events. His nerves had faded, replaced by a growing sense of excitement for what lay ahead. For the first time in a long time, he felt like the world was opening up to him, not just in possibilities, but in connections. As he drifted to sleep, Martha sat in her armchair, knitting a scarf for the coming winter. She glanced out the window, the city lights twinkling faintly in the distance. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to feel something unfamiliar, but welcome. Hope. They were moving forward, together, and that, she knew, was all Angela would have wanted. The San Francisco farmers market had finally normal operation, and the air buzzed with energy. Rows of stalls, newly repaired and freshly painted, brimmed with colorful produce, handmade crafts, and the familiar aroma of baked goods. Martha's table stood proudly among them, adorned with baskets of strawberries, oranges, and the ever-popular scones. Rachel and Adam arrived early that morning, carrying a basket of treats for Martha and Jerry. The past months had solidified their bond as a family, and these visits had become a cherished routine. As they walked through the market, Rachel couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging, a warmth that grew stronger with each step. Jerry spotted them first. He waved excitedly from behind the stall, his face lighting up. "Rachel! Adam!" he called, his voice carrying over the chatter of the crowd. Martha turned, her smile widening when she saw them. She wiped her hands on her apron and stepped out to greet them. With a tone as warm as the sun peeking through the clouds, she greeted them. "Jerry's been talking about you two all morning." Rachel leaned down to hug Jerry, who wrapped his arms around her tightly. "I've missed you, kiddo," she said softly. "Me too," Jerry replied, his grin bright. "I saved you some scones." "Good," Adam teased, ruffling Jerry's hair. "I was hoping you didn't eat them all." Later that afternoon, the market's central square transformed into a festive gathering. Bright streamers hung between stalls, and the hum of a live acoustic band filled the air. Families sat together on picnic blankets, enjoying the food and the lively atmosphere. At Martha's insistence, Rachel stood with Jerry on a small makeshift stage at the center of the square. The crowd quieted as she spoke into the microphone, her voice steady despite the emotion she felt. "Today is special for more than one reason," she began, her hand resting gently on Jerry's shoulder. "This market isn't just a place for vendors and shoppers. It's a place where lives intersect. And that's exactly what happened here. In the chaos of an earthquake, this market brought us together." She paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd before landing back on Jerry. "I want to introduce you all to someone extraordinary. This is Jerry Harris, my nephew. He and his grandmother, Martha, have shown me what it means to have courage, kindness, and an open heart." The crowd broke into applause, and Jerry's cheeks turned pink as he ducked his head. Rachel knelt beside him, whispering, "They're clapping for you, Jerry. Be proud." Martha watched from the crowd, her heart swelling. For so long, she had carried the weight of Angela's absence, wondering if she could give Jerry the life he deserved. Now, seeing him surrounded by love and support, she felt the quiet assurance that she wasn't alone anymore. That evening, the four of them climbed a small hill just outside the city, a spot Martha had discovered years ago. The view stretched out over San Francisco, the skyline glowing softly under the setting sun. They sat together on a blanket, the warm breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers. Jerry leaned back against Rachel's side, his gaze fixed on the horizon. "The city looks so different from up here," he said thoughtfully. "Like it's all connected." "It is," Adam replied, his voice calm. "Everything and everyone is connected in some way." Jerry turned to Martha, his eyes reflecting the golden light. "Grandma, do you think Mum and Dad can see us from up there?" Martha's throat tightened, but she managed a soft smile. "I think they can. And I think they're proud of you, Jerry. Of all of us." Rachel reached over, taking Martha's hand in hers. "They'd be proud of you too, Martha. You've given him so much." Martha squeezed Rachel's hand, her voice quiet but steady. "We've done it together." As the sun dipped lower, casting the sky in shades of amber and rose, Jerry sat quietly, taking it all in. The laughter, the warmth, and the sense of unity contrasted sharply with the fear and uncertainty he had experienced months earlier. He thought back to that moment in the market, the decision to help a stranger when everything around him was falling apart. It had seemed small at the time, but it had changed everything. A soft breeze rustled the grass, and Jerry closed his eyes, his heart full. This was more than he had ever dared to hope for, a family bound not just by blood, but by love and resilience. In that moment, As the last rays of sunlight stretched across the horizon, Jerry realized that courage wasn't just about facing fear. It was about opening your heart to the possibilities that came after. And for the first time in a long time, he felt truly at peace. If this film touches your heart, leave your mark with a like, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel to explore more meaningful stories with us. Share your feelings with us and tell us your own stories. Every word you share is a building block that helps create our strong and enduring community. Together, we'll create a warm space where everyone can share and connect. Finally, don't miss the incredible stories coming your way soon. We're always here to bring you the best selections, full of deep values, yet entertaining.